Hey everyone, welcome to Dojo Talks. Let me just say right off the top, I'm having some tech issues. I don't know if it's the internet or Twitch or what. Jesse was also having issues at the end of the last stream. But we're going to be recording the episode. Hopefully it doesn't lag too much. If it does, we apologize, but the recording should still be good, and we are going to put that up on YouTube and Spotify pretty much ASAP. So hopefully for the live stream, it's not too bad. But anyway, let's get into it. So today for Dojo Talks, we are talking about a universal training plan. And we're trying to answer the question whether it's possible, first of all, to have some kind of universal training plan to get someone from, let's say, beginner level all the way up to 2,000, 2,200 OTB. We'll talk about the potential limits. And then if it is possible to make a universal training plan, we're going to discuss what that might look like. Because as a lot of you guys know, we recently launched a site, and we are very interested in helping as many players as possible get really, really good at chess. And so our dream is to have this kind of like full enveloping dojo guide where we have recommendations, we have skills that you need to practice, assignments, annotating games, and so on and so forth. So Jesse took a first stab at a possible training plan. And I think we're just going to get right into it. We'll have Jesse lead us off, and then we'll see where we go.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I'll give a little background. I've been teaching chess for a long time. And what this training plan kind of goes back to is years ago, we're talking 2 decades ago, was put in charge of this elementary school chess team. And, at the time it was just a gig, it's just a gig, but I got really into it. And I think I learned a lot about chess and chess teaching from this gig. And what I did was created like a system, let's call it, of competencies that the kids could prove themselves in. And, we had our own rating system, so they would get like points for doing X competency. And we crushed everybody. We won the state championship and yada, yada. And we did well at nationals. And, I didn't have a big pool of players to choose from. It was, this little tiny school. We did great. And I did that a couple times. And my approach, especially from what I'm calling, like, let's say from 500 to 1,500, is really based on that memory. And I think it applies to any type of player, whether you're young or old. And so let me just kind of dive into what I've written here. Now, I started at 500 as a low, the low bound of the rating. Could I have gone lower? Possible. Also, I should note that when I say 500, I'm thinking about USCF, and that translates weird to like chess.com and FIDE and Lichess. Chess.com, I think, is inflated above USCF. FIDE is a little bit below. Lichess is like way stratospheric. And Lichess of 500 is like a 2,500, They're way up there with the Lichess. That's a little bit of a joke, but it's also, there's enough truth in it to be kind of real. In any case, so what I believe for anybody is that, first of all, going over your games is going to be the most essential part of your improvement. Now, especially for children, they need help. They need some kind of coach to help them see what the questions are. It's very hard for them to sit on a position and think about what the questions might be. In any case, this is an example for getting from 500 to 600. I have review and annotate 25 classical games. Again, if you're a kid, it's a little different. You're going to probably need a little bit of help. As an adult, you might also need some help. It doesn't necessarily have to be a coach, though. It could also be a friend who goes over the games with you, or your opponent after you play the game. And yeah.
Are these classical games like games played by Tarash or games?
No, these are played by you.
Okay.
By classical, thank you I was going to clarify. By classical games, I just mean games that have a long time control. Mm-hmm. Let's say minimum of 45 minutes plus 30. Is it very difficult for beginning players to play that time control? Yes. And that's one of the first things I want to do is institute a habit of understanding that you're not going to progress unless you are doing some long thinking. So that's the most important part of any jump in any of these bands I've done is review and annotate the games. Then I have Polgar Maiden ones. So that's 300 of them. A Puzzle Rush score of 3. Interesting, we can debate that. Like, what is the Puzzle Rush score? But I think 3 is a good number for 500 to 600. Learning to mate with the queen. Now, each one of these sections has an endgame competency. And what I had with the kids, and this really worked well, is say you're doing a mate with the queen. You have to do it 3 times in a row. If you screw it up, doesn't matter. You got to do it all over again. Mate with the queen is traumatic for 500s because they will stalemate. And then it's like, oh no, I got to start all over again. And with all these competencies, I want to say it's important to me that you are kind of judged by a jury of your peers, i.e. you play against not your coach, but you play against somebody who's rated around you. Then I have memorizing Morphy versus the Duke. And then I have as a vid opening principles. Now with all these things, I do think it's important to memorize some games, and we're going to have vids for, and it doesn't even have to be our vids. We can link to other people if we like their vids. But I think something like memorizing a game like Morphy versus the Duke, it's not that long. It'll be difficult if you're just beginning, but it's a great stepping stone to kind of start thinking about what was going on in a game like that. One dream I have too with this is, especially if we get the dojo going, that 2 things would happen in the dojo. One, we would have people who are like, hey, I'm at 500 and this is what I've completed in this program, and I'm ready to play, the defending side against Mate with the Queen. I'm willing to talk to you about the Morphy versus Duke game. And then later, let's say you've progressed, you will have Morphy versus the Duke kind of in your mind, and the fellow dojoers will be like, yeah, I know that game. We can, that's like a common vocabulary. And so, for example, in the 600 to 700, I also want people to memorize some games, but I didn't list which games. And that could be something we talk about. There'll be vids. I say Puzzle Rush score of 5. And then, of course, you're moving on to the maiden 2s. And the most important part of any of this would then, for example, of 600 to 700, I promise I'm almost done, will be review and annotate 30 games. And then the mating, the endgame competency is then mating with the rook. So that was my general program then. I still very much believe in it. And then, I've taken that all the way up to, I think, 1400. And I stopped there. And I think, just to finish, one reason I stopped there is if I'm nervous about a universal training program, it's more later. Like later when I'm teaching people who are around above 1600, there's usually some aspect of their game that really needs work that's different than other people. Now, I'm willing to rethink that. I'm willing to believe like a coach could say, no, that's not true, Jesse. They just don't know how to calculate. And then I could say, maybe that's true too, boss. Maybe that's also true. Anyways, that is a long introduction to this rough draft of a training program that I'm putting out there. And then, David and Kostya can respond any way they want. And also they could debate whether it's even possible to have a universal training program.
Yeah. So basically, Jesse, let me sum up for folks. It's like you've kind of laid out like a list of tasks that people need to accomplish. And some of these things are simply like a matter of time. You just have to put the time in. Other things are more skill-based, where like if you can't get it, you just have to practice until you can mate with a king and queen, king and rook without stalemating and so on.
Right.
Which I think makes a lot of sense. I also think, as you brought up towards the end there, like one of the more important things is going to be like getting some kind of I think feedback like from a coach. Because people have all kinds of, I think, misconceptions and biases in their game, I think at all levels, not just at 1600. I think my intuition for how to get anyone better would be that some form of feedback from a coach or stronger player has to be involved. Like for example, there are lots of players, let's say on the lower rating side, and when you talk to them, it feels like they have a great conceptual understanding of like they got to work on their calculation. They have to make sure they're looking for their opponent's resources. Like when they're talking about the end game, they're like, oh, I got to make sure my king is active in the end game. It feels like they understand all the principles. And then you look at some of their games and it's like they're not castling until their opponent castles because they're afraid of castling on opposite sides of the board. And it's those things that I think are a lot of times holding people back, but you can only kind of sniff them out when you're going through someone's games and kind of looking at it with them. But let me ask David, just like get your general thoughts. Like, do you think a universal training plan is possible? And what would that look like? Generally speaking, is it way different to what Jesse put out?
Okay, well, it's hard to address everything at once because it's such a big topic, but I think there are several challenges to trying to lay out a universal training program. So maybe I could lay out a couple challenges and then we can like pick one at a time to discuss how much of a problem it is. So one challenge to a universal training program is that people have different styles of learning. So some people learn well by listening to a video and other people learn better by playing a game. Right. And you can put some mix of all these things in, but you are doing sort of like a cookie cutter. You're telling everybody to play 25 games, review 25 games, like use Puzzle Rush, like memorize a game. Right. There might be somebody who for some reason just can't memorize games, but they've got other ways that they could get good at chess. They could spend all their effort like trying to memorize the game. Like they've knocked everything else on the list, but that's like a sticking point for them. Right. So like people will get hung up on different points in this thing. And should they keep like bashing away at something that just doesn't work for them? So, and we can get into more detail on that, but that would be like learning styles, right? Some people learn by hearing, doing, teaching, discussing. Some people need to be able to ask questions about it, etc. Then there's the element of like interest. I think like in my own coaching, like I take motivation as an important piece of a training plan. And so let's say we prescribe somebody to like learn end games at any particular level, right? We're like, it's time for you to learn this one chapter of an end game book on king and pawn end games. Maybe somebody just hates end games and they'd rather not get better at chess than do that, or they just like refuse to do it. Right. And somebody else loves it, and like they were mad the last two levels that there were no end game books in it. Right. Like I think you can get a lot more out of somebody in many occasions by feeding them what they want. Though, they may also need what they don't want at some point, but it's a tricky thing to manage motivations when people have different tastes. So that's different tastes. And then you've got different resources. Kostya alluded to like the value of a coach. Some people have a coach, some people don't. So how do you make a training program that's universal if somebody has like a coach to go over their games with and someone else doesn't? Like, the review and annotate 25 classical games is going to be very, very different if I can bring them to Kostya and ask him what he thinks I'm figuring out versus if I'm just doing it by myself. And then I don't know if anything that I annotated was right or wrong. So those are three elements. And then another thing is people are going to have different like natural strengths and weaknesses that develop over time. So as you get into higher and higher ratings, what people need to work on is going to be different in many cases, even if they've done all the same steps up to that point. So even if they are following your cookie cutter and they're all managing their motivation and they all have access to a coach and they're all like fighting their way through each element of the training program, you'll still have divergent skills and weaknesses. And that, we can argue where that starts and how big it gets, but I think we all agree it starts smaller and then like sort of diverges as people go further into chess. And then like it's more and more challenging the higher rated somebody is to say a universal thing about what they should be working on because they're going to be so different than another player with the exact same rating.
Yeah, that especially feels like it'll become an issue once we get to like 1600, 1800. I was just thinking just now about all the students in like the Ultimate Sensei season, and they're all like around 1600 or so. But like, yeah, they all seem like completely different players that could be working on completely different things. So, Yeah, when I envision like a universal thing, I think part of that is just like you got to get some sessions with a coach or some like game review. And yeah, of course, that's not going to be accessible to everyone, although there are definitely coaches out there on the more affordable side. So I'm hoping that it's not going to be a killer for everyone. At the same time, there's often really high rated players, actually, especially in the Discord, that are very generous with their time. And if people post their games, like in the Discord channel, usually they get some feedback from some very decent players that are like several hundred points ahead of them. So that, of course, is very cool and something that people can take advantage of.
Mm-hmm. So you could try to solve the resources issue with coaches with some community.
That would be my hope. Yeah. And we're often talking about including in the program some kind of cohort system where people have other players that are going through the same program, working together. They can review games with each other, work on the same tasks. To me, that seems like a big part of it, because training with someone else is not just like enjoyable and makes you do more. I think it also just like pushes you to work harder. It's just like so many benefits. Yeah. Now, some people definitely think a universal training plan is not possible. And there are certainly many players out there that have gotten stuck at a certain rating level and then just like never broke past it. 1,400, 1,500, whatever. Mm-hmm. My intuition on those people is that if they worked long enough with someone more experienced, like a coach or high rated player, that they could break through whatever plateau they're currently at. Maybe there is this concept of like an actual peak. Like you just have a peak strength. You're never going to be stronger than 1782. That's just it. I think very few people have reached their peak. I think it'd be really hard to even determine what that would be or what it would look like. To me, it feels like pretty much everyone has room to grow. And focusing on like, whether any 1,200 can hit to like 2,200, I feel like is kind of maybe losing time. The point is the 1,200 can get a lot better if they put a lot of time in and they work on the right stuff. So whether they can hit to like 1,800 or 2,200, to me, it's just like, whatever, just shoot for the stars and you'll land on the moon. You will end up getting somewhere.
So let's pick one of my objections at a time maybe and see whether you and Jesse think it's a problem or not. So
okay, yeah. So
one started on the access to coach idea. What do you think, Jesse? Is that going to be something that makes it hard? Is that like a real challenge to a universal training?
Well, first of all, one reason I really like this is I've had so many people, especially in the last couple of months, being like, Jesse, can you teach me? And I'm like, no, dude, I have too many students, and I'm doing the dojo. I'm doing the dojo party. I'm overextended, man. And one of the things that I want to say is I didn't have a coach for the longest time, mostly because I was poor, very poor, and I didn't have money for a coach. And what I can say is if you wanted to study with me, what I would do is I would prescribe the exact same things I have here. And the only difference would be that after you annotate your game, that I would go over it with you. That's the one big difference. And I would help you, I would teach you how to annotate the game. That is the key difference I think a coach could bring, is that helps you see things in your game that you're not bringing. But I really want to stress, you can do that without a coach. I did it without a coach for a long time. And not all coaches will even appreciate that or how to do it. And of course, when I put this training program up, it's obviously comes from my own experience. Let me address something else that you said, David. I think just want to respond to it. You said something like, well, what if people don't want to memorize or not that good at it? What if they don't want to do endgames? What if they don't want to annotate their games? And I think one of the nice things actually about a pre-programmed method of study is that you don't give yourself an out. You don't give yourself some like, oh, I'm not very good at this. Because let me tell you just as a metaphor, you get, 16-year-old kids in a gym, and what do? They're like work out on their biceps or something all day, and they never work out their legs. So you get these guys with these huge biceps and these squeamy little legs, and it's ridiculous. And the chess world, you see it as well, but you don't actually see it as visually as you do in a gym, and that's why I offer.
That's so funny. That's such a good metaphor, Jesse. Yeah, people are skipping endgame day. You're absolutely right.
Skipping endgame day. You skipped endgame day, buddy. And it's so easy to skip stuff. And I think one thing I know a lot of the people who are coming to me who want to be coached is they want someone to give them structure and a kind of responsibility, because especially now, when let's say you type in chess into YouTube, you are going to be flooded with all kinds of stuff, some of it very good, but all of it completely unstructured. And it reminds me of some colleges where, once you go in and you'll like the courses you take will be just totally random, in the sense that like some professor is interested in, the importance of what John Schmo said in 1932 to today's society. Right? That'll be your course for that semester. And then next semester be like, Jane Schmo in 1982 had this thought. Let's think about that. And it's totally unrelated. Now, are those thoughts maybe interesting? Yeah, quite possibly, but it's not structured in any kind of way. So, you can come in and you can say, I differ from this methodology. I get that. But I think there should be some kind of methodology to a structured program. And honestly, it's almost like picking one, whether you like mine or not, picking a program is probably better than doing something where you're just going off whatever feels good at the day, because then you're going to skip leg day. You're just going to skip it because it doesn't feel good. Same thing with me. Like now at my advanced age, memorization has become very difficult, but honestly, it would be a pretty good thing for me to do.
Okay. Let me push around with that for a moment. Because I'm saying there's a potential issue with different levels of motivation.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Mm-hmm. And then your answer feels a little bit like saying like, well, they just need to be motivated. Like I don't see where your training program is supplying motivation. You're kind of saying like, if they're not motivated and they don't do it, they won't be good, what a fool who skipped endgame day or whatever. Right. But how do is your plan valuable if they're going to keep skipping leg day even after you put out your plan?
Well, I think the dream is, and this is, so let me just a little backstory. I have a bunch of students who now, mostly a lot of it simply, I can't teach them. I don't have a lot of time to teach them. But what they've done is they've started working together, sparring in different positions I've given them, going over some of their own games together. It's working beautifully. And so my dream for a program like this is that you can utilize the beautiful social aspects of stuff like our Discord channel and also the greater chess community. And so, for example, let's say you don't want to do leg day. Well, my dream would be you go to our site, you log into this program, and you get a bunch of check boxes where you can check this off. And when you do the mate with the queen, you do it with somebody from the dojo, rated around yourself, you rate it around your rating, and you check it off. And if you'd have the choice to make your profile public or private, but if it was public, you'd be like, yeah, I did it. And you can see other people who are then, in the same process of improvement. And I think it is a big deal. I think one of the things that Chess Punks kind of turned me on to is there is a very interesting motivating factor in socially just saying, hey, I did it, It was anti-intuitive to me at first, but I'm starting to get it as an improver myself, that it's like, if I just say, right, this is what I did today. And it might have been hard work, but I did it. I didn't do the easy calories by playing Blitz or whatever it was, what I might have done in the past.
Yeah. No, I think there is a big difference there between we can just talk on stream and just offer this advice all the time. Do your end games, do this, and then the motivated people will listen to it and they'll do it. The ones that it's hard for, they'll have a lot of resistance and they probably won't do it. But yeah, if you have like some kind of set up thing like on a site, like ChessDojo just does an amazing job of this. I think people kind of refer to it as like gamifying the process, kind of like make a game out of it. That gives people a ton of motivation. It's funny, the like the chess punks and the adult improvers, they often like will post their stuff on Twitter,
Right,
but now
right.
I feel like it's gone a little bit too far where they're posting when they start rather than when they finish, right? So if you wanted to just get a bunch of likes, a bunch of social clout, you just have to write like, oh, today's day 1 of my like 1,000 days of chess. I'm going to work like 4 hours a day for the next like 3 years. Hashtag 1,000 days of chess. Let's go. Your post will get like 150 likes. You'll feel great about yourself without actually having done anything, right? I feel like a lot of those people probably burn out because they're starting like way too hyped up. I love the idea of just having a checklist that you got to go through, and then it feels good as you're doing it. And yeah, if someone does everything on the checklist except for this one thing that they're dreading,
Right.
I mean, it might be indicative of like a bigger problem, because I would imagine we would think that no phase of the game should really just be like totally neglected. That just seems too extreme. And then at the end of it, it's like, that person is kind of only lying to themselves in a way if they're like not doing what is just very clearly laid out for them, and then they're still like, ooh, I'm not getting better. I don't know. So I think it does make a big difference when it's like very clearly laid out, or when like a coach tells you like, here's what you got to do to get better. And if you don't do it, it's like, it's totally all on you at that point. To David's point though, totally agree that people learn in different ways, and we should offer some kind of alternatives. Like if you truly despise memorizing games, I don't think that's a requirement, for improving. I think lots of players have gotten better without memorizing games. Learning particular end games, I think it's very, very important. So maybe we should differentiate between the stuff that's just like 100% you cannot get better without doing or learning this thing versus like, I don't know, here's our very, very strong suggestions. Please, please, please do this. But like, okay, if you absolutely cannot memorize games, or you cannot like annotate your games, whatever it might be, like we have some kind of alternative available.
Yeah. Like I can see, listening to you both, I can see adults with medium to high motivation, like just saying like, okay, I'll check off everything on this list. Okay, I'm getting check marks. Okay, Jesse said to do it. Okay, there's like a group of 20 other people doing it this month with me. I can see that. I have a harder time seeing like a kid doing it, because like kids are much worse than adults in general at doing something they don't want to do, right? So like it's a much bigger ask on a kid, much, much tougher. And then, maybe some adults who have lower motivation to begin with, I think it also could be like a problem for.
Let me just say, the beta testing here was all kids. It was all kids. I did this all with kids. And the only difference was that I went over the games with them, and like I said, I think, I tell a lot of students this too. I'm like, if you study with me, what we're going to do is we're going to go over your games. So especially if it's a cost thing, you can find people, especially on our Discord. I know they're there. They're happy to look at the games with you, and you just go over some variations, meet on Zoom, and don't use the computer until later. You can use it later, but just try to speak clearly about what you see happening in the position, and then try to write it out as succinctly as possible. Improvement will follow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I think it's like by the way, I think it's a net good thing to provide this, even if not everybody does it or follows through with it, right? It's like having a really, really good organized resource, can only be helpful, and people can choose to use it or not. I don't think it'll help everybody equally. I think it's an important, good point to remember that Jesse was able to make use of annotating games without a coach, because it would seem like having a coach would be so important for that. But I guess Jesse's kind of saying like that would make it go faster, but you can still do it and you can still get there without the coach. So, I mean, I think it's like a great project to do overall.
And I want to stress something I didn't. One thing, it's funny, just thinking back, I think one of the key things that helped me when I was trying to become a GM was also a little bit inadvertent. First, teaching kids how to do the basic stuff. Honestly, I do think it helped me. But also, then this was like, so long ago, but I helped start this company called Chess Lecture. And one of the things I did was I would review my own games after I'd studied them and like force myself to try to be as clear as possible, speaking to a varied audience, a varied ability about what I saw happening in the game. And so in hindsight, it's this beautiful system of chess, of any kind of improvement that I did the video on a couple months ago, about plus minus and equal, a plus being the coach, an equal being a cohort, and a minus being somebody who you are trying to explain stuff to. That process of me explaining really helped my thinking and just being very clear about what I was doing at the board. So one of the things I want to stress is it's not just a coach. Everyone's talking about a coach. That's great. But having some friends who are your cohort, and then somebody, maybe even they're paying you a little bit of money or just you're helping them. Beautiful. If you are forced to put into words your own thoughts, I think it's a big part of the picture.
Yeah. Now for me, if I was to design my own universal training plan, I assume I'll be contributing a lot. There's going to be a lot of chess books on that list. Mm-hmm. And this is something I've kind of like talked about before, but it's like all the chess books are already out there. It's like so many people improved, not just without the coach, but before computers were around, their engines. There's so many masters from the past and really, really strong players. And I think a lot of them just like learned from game analysis, going over their games, analyzing, but also just like reading really high quality chess books and the annotations of strong players. So for me, that would be a big part of it, just like assigning homework, read this book or this book, or if people want to do it on Chessable, that's totally, for me, that's okay. Another, I guess, thing we would have to figure out is like, explaining how to train. I think a lot of people, when they're solving puzzles, for example, you guys probably have this experience, they don't fully get it right. They don't fully see the solution, but they got it kind of half right. And so in their mind, it's like, okay, I kind of got this one. And they don't really, analyze whether they fully saw everything or whether they could have calculated better or more accurately. Lots of people use arrows, for example, when they're calculating. And that's something I know like we never did because we grew up playing OTB and there are no arrows and we're just like not used to it. And those can be kind of a crutch. I think those are not necessarily helpful in the long run. So a big part of this also, I think, has to be kind of explaining, really breaking it down, maybe through videos of like, here's how you solve a puzzle and put your maximum effort into it and get the most out of it. Would love to see a video from Jesse, like here's how you annotate your games. So you don't have to sit everyone down and explain it to them. You can just make a video, and that would be a huge part, of the training plan. Maybe we can make it so the site doesn't even let you progress until you sit there and you watch the full video without skipping through it.
We'll definitely have, videos. And I like what you're saying about problems where like you didn't do the full thing. And that's one of the reasons as a coach, I really like the made in twos. There's a lot of reasons that I like the Polgar made in twos, but one of the things that's very nice there is it's harder to skim. It's harder to be like, oh, I kind of get it intuitively, right? No, it's like, you have to absolutely get it. It's easier to know if you've got it or not.
So maybe some kind of tests we could incorporate as well. That I don't know how we would exactly design them, but the idea would be to really test whether the student has done the work or is kind of like putting their best habits into play. I don't know how we would test this, but maybe it would be some idea to think about.
Right.
Do you think that the three of us could agree on what sort of set of knowledge everyone should eventually know once they're, if they're going to eventually get to 2200?
That's a good question.
Right? Like, okay, we agree that they all need to learn king and queen against king at some point, right? But would we all think that they would have needed to study like opposite colored bishop endings by then, or some more advanced topics? Is there like a huge body of knowledge that we could agree on?
I feel like we could agree on a lot of stuff, but yeah, I think it'd be really hard to come to a specific consensus like that. Like, here are the books, or here are the games you need to know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I'm sure once we start drilling into it, that we'll have interesting differences. For example, I've always forced my students to do the bishop and knight checkmate. Now, could you get to 2200 without it? Yeah, I'm sure you could. I'm sure you could do it. But the philosophy isn't just like learning, how to do this so you get it in a game, but as a visualization exercise, in the same way that the mate and twos are not just about mating patterns, they're about visualizing the board and everything that's happening on it. So there is certainly, like, just say in my business here, there's all kinds of, even though it seems simple on the surface, there's all kind of hidden assumptions. And I'm sure when we drill down, like, yeah, it might be different. Maybe we'll have 3 different training programs, and David's will be like, well, this one's optional. This one's optional. So anyways, yeah, it's possible that we might end up with 3 different ones.
Yeah. I feel like 3 different ones could be confusing, and maybe we should force ourselves to sort of average our programs together somehow, even if it involves a lot of like acrimony in the Discord.
I mean, it could be as simple as we have the fundamental requirements that we all agree on. We all agree, just presumably, like, you got to annotate a bunch of your games. You got to do a couple sessions with a training partner. You have to, spend like an hour on tactics, just whatever it is. And then maybe we have our own individual recommendations for each level. And maybe even those are the same. But yeah, I would be more on, like, for me, the bishop and knight checkmate, just for example, I would be like, yeah, strongly recommended, but do you like have to do it? No, I don't. I think there are many masters that like never learned it, right? So that for me would be like a strong recommendation, but not just like a hardcore 100%. And so, yeah, I feel like there is a way to work around the stuff that we don't agree on. I also just think, it's not really, it doesn't seem possible that you can just say like, okay, study these 350 games and then you will be 1900 level. It could take a lot less for some players. It could take a lot more. So my idea would just be like, here's 500 games that I think you should look at. And then I would break them down, however, and then the idea would be like, yeah, if you do this work, I think you will improve quite a bit. But for me, it's very hard to say like, oh yeah, this is exactly what you have to do to get from 14 to 1600. But I would be comfortable saying like, here are my strong recommendations.
Right. And so right up front, you will hit some boundary where it's going to be really hard to progress, and you might fly up the rating ladder much quicker than, before you even finish the task. Totally possible.
We definitely need to have something in there about like what to do if you've finished everything on the list and you're not yet 1400, or what to do if you've hit 1400 and you've only done half the list. You still need to finish the list for 13 to 1400. We definitely need to set that out, since people are going to go at different rates.
One funny thing about this too is David was talking about things where people might not be into it, some aspect of the training program. And several years ago, I was doing a camp with some talented kids, and as prizes for, various things they had done in the camp, I was giving out chess books. And this one kid comes up, he's like, this isn't that user-friendly. And it's really stuck with me. And it's like, the thing with books, I'm like, philosophically, I'm totally behind Kostya in the book thing. But I know the kids aren't reading books. They don't know how to read books. It's like reading books. What I'm realizing when I think about this younger generation, it's like they haven't grown up reading books, and there's a skill involved in reading books. I don't just mean like how to read words off a page, but like how to think about somebody who's writing sentences and what their meaning is, and thinking about what the meaning is and turning it over in your mind a little bit. And then also just with a book, you're looking at a page, you're looking at the board, you're going back. It's a skill. And I think for a lot of kids, especially, but even millennials, like they didn't grow up reading. So it's a problem. Now, do I want them to read the books? Yes. But it's funny. I hadn't really thought about it too much, but the first book I have in here comes at the rating of 1,000, for example. That's the first book I put in there. And anyways, I just want to put it as a side. It's like the only thing I can imagine being optional is the books, just because I know the kids can't take it. I know it's just too hard.
Yeah. I'm with you. I'm with you on the kids. Actually, in my mind for all of this, I'm mainly just thinking of kind of like adult or teenage improvers that kind of have their own self-motivation. And I feel like they don't really have issues going through like a book or a course if that's just what you tell them, that's what they need to do. I would think maybe a separate plan for kids might be useful. Some kids might have like an adult that can work with them and kind of help them through stuff. Some might even have like a chess playing parent. Others might not have a lot of support. So yeah, definitely really, really hard for kids to kind of do like self-study. So my feeling would be that we should just treat them separately as a separate category.
I think that's a very good point. And, as I was saying earlier with motivation, I was like, I could see like adults doing Jesse's like training program, but maybe not kids, despite the guinea pig thing. But actually, as you're saying this, Kostya, I thought there might be one way to have this plan be for adults and kids, and that is to tell kids that it's only for adults. And because if you tell kids you got to do all this stuff, they're just not going to want to do it. But if you tell them they can't do it, then actually they might be able to work through the whole thing right off of that.
Yeah, that's so funny.
Honestly, like when I think about kids, let's think about our famous chess latte, friend of the dojo. The guy has a rating of 1,100, but is actually at least 1,900. In any case, I would love for him to have some kind of structure like this, because he, like everybody else, is going online, finding content and just bouncing from one thing to the other, and then ending up playing blitz. Lots of blitz. And, he's going to improve anyway, because he's a young, talented kid, but he doesn't have the structure. So yeah, I would love for him to be like, okay, here's my 60 games that I got to do. I got to go through them. Christ says I got to do it. Check it off, buddy. That's Chess Latte's path to improvement for sure. At least that's what I believe.
Well, it seems doable. I mean, there are lots of kids that are super motivated, and they just need, like adults, they just need that like checklist that they feel like good about, and like they can cross it off. And we can just try to make it really straightforward. Like, this is the path to mastery, path to chess improvement, whatever it is. It's it's so funny. The last thing a kid wants to be is a baby. So that's what we say. This course is not for babies.
This course is too hard for kids to do. So it's for adults, and when you're older, you can try it.
I love it. That's a great idea.
Yeah. I think we should also include some don'ts, probably.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think a lot of people do some serious don'ts, right? Like, we don't have to like agree about them like right now on air. But like playing too much. You want to actively discourage people. Like, here's a book you shouldn't read. It'll make your brain dumber, right? And like, bullet chess, and and you get a maximum of like 100 puzzle rushes in your life, and then like you have to cut yourself off.
Right.
I got a question for you guys. Let me just frame it this way. So, obviously I did this thing. It has a lot of my own assumptions in there. You guys have also taught a lot of varied players of varied ability. And mine is obviously reflecting my values. I got going over your games, the maiden twos, a little puzzle rush, an endgame competency, memorize some stuff, watch some vids. Boom, you're on to the next level. So I'm interested, how would you guys at least intuitively do it? And what do you have like, what do you push at these various levels?
You want to go first, Kostya? What's like your first thought of something that isn't in Jesse's plan that you would push pretty hard?
Oh, let me pull that up real quick.
Okay. Well, then I can answer.
If you have an
real quick
idea,
first,
David,
then.
yeah, go ahead.
I'll answer real quick first. The number one thing that I do, Jesse, is I really stress working with peers.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've got nothing against the plus equal minus, right? But I just think like peers, like, is the most obvious relationship. Like nobody has to pay anybody. It's like equal. There's like available, similar motivations and goals and all that. You know, there's no question of like, you know, does somebody owe somebody something or is it any unequal, right? So I would put in a lot of like discussing stuff and like sparring. That's what would come into mind a lot. So like if you're forcing them to annotate games, mine would be like, and then show it to, you know, and then show it to your buddies and like have them tell you what they think, right? Or stuff of that sort, you know, or like, it's like, okay, you're all going to watch this video, but then you have to talk about the video with your homie.
Yeah. Oh, I'm totally there with you. And I think that's the genius of social media and the dojo site is that we now have the power to organize that. You were not alone doing this program. I think, I think it's a huge part of it.
Yeah.
Well, then that's the main thing I've got to offer. And it sounds like we can probably include it.
Yeah, to add to that, because I feel like, Jesse, your list is actually pretty comprehensive because you have room there for reading certain books or watching certain videos. Right. I'm sure there's a ton of great videos that we would recommend. And we were discussing like this isn't going to be exclusive to Dojo content, which I think is really important because I actually worked on the chess.com study plans. They were very, very similar to this in spirit. But the main drawback there was we were, you know, kept to chess.com resources. And chess.com has like a ton of videos and a ton of stuff, but they don't have literally everything, right? Whereas
close,
they're close, right? But they don't have like videos on like, you know, every single topic and like how to annotate your games and how to deal when your opponent is being like too aggressive on you or just like random stuff that might be a little bit rarer to find. So I like that we can just include other people's content as well and be like, yeah, like John Bartholomew, just throwing him out there, has some amazing videos on YouTube, I think, that are super instructive. So I would maybe include some like flex goals, like stuff that you don't have to do, but if you have more time and you haven't really gotten there yet, then maybe watch this video or do this thing. And similar to what David was saying, I think every couple of months or so, I would really suggest if someone, you know, doesn't have a coach or isn't working with anyone, to try and get at least one lesson where you go through multiple games with a higher rated player, just to get some feedback on what you're doing, especially if you're feeling like stuck, you haven't been gaining, you feel like you've been working hard, but you don't feel like you're improving. I would definitely include some kind of strong recommendations for getting a lesson or two with a coach. I think that would be really important.
Right.
And maybe just throwing this out there, we don't have to commit to this, but like I would personally feel motivated that like if someone went through our full list and like clearly has worked hard and did everything and they're still like, I'm not improving. Maybe I would just look at their games, you know, for free with them because they've been working hard and, you know, I'm interested in having them get better and they've been going through like the dojo guide, you know, it's like I could totally see myself.
Guarantee on the course. If you don't make it to 2000, you get a private lesson with Kostya.
Free lessons for life until you get there. Just something like, again, no promises, but like I would think that would be cool.
Right.
But obviously there'd be a lot of people.
After 10 lessons, you're like, this person's throwing their games to keep having lessons with me. They're like rated 1990.
Right. Yeah.
Cool. Well, it sounds like we're going to do this project.
Yeah. You know, and one of the things I'm just realizing too is like when you annotate, let's say you're going to annotate 25 games because you're in the 500 to 600. One of the cool things is you don't have to, but you can make it public. And whether it's on Lead Chess or chess.com, you can say, here's my library. You can go see what I did. You know, you can see this is how I annotated it when I was a 500, for example.
Oh, maybe we can make it a requirement for some of the stronger players to do the minus part and go review some games of lower rated players.
Yeah.
And have them explain exactly where they messed up. And that would be kind of an exercise for them and also very helpful for the player that submitted their games.
Genius. It really is great. Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah. Let's do it, my friends. Let's do it.
All right. Well, we're going to revisit this topic in Dojo Talks once we've actually really tried to do this thing and like fought with each other about some of the nitty gritty, right? Like, Jesse, we need to bring that down to 20 annotated games. 25 is just, just a little bit too much, or something like that, whatever it may be. I think we'll fight through it and we'll come back to this topic and we'll be much more educated on the topic once we've been in the trench. So it'll be an even better episode then. There's
a lot of, we have to do. There's also technological details that we got to figure out, poor DM Hokie. I did the easy part. DM Hokie's got to figure out the tech part of how to do this on our website, man. Poor guy, And then I think also huge is just, will we have enough critical mass in terms of people doing it, right? I think the more people that do it and are engaged with one another, the more successful it will be.
Yeah. Well, okay. I think we'll end it there. That was great. Once again, everyone, sorry for the lag during the stream, but the show will be put up on YouTube in full in the next couple of days and on Spotify as well. So if you missed it or decided not to watch because it was too laggy, you will be able to hear the full discussion. And that's gonna do it. Thanks everyone for joining us. And we'll see you all next time.
Let me just make a quick ask or announcement before you send out a raid. I mean, Dojo Talks is done, but Friday night fights is this evening. So if you like playing some Blitz or maybe even some Degenerate Bullet, there'll definitely be a Blitz tournament to start with. And sometimes if there's popular request, Scott will tack on a Bullet tournament afterwards. You can play this evening. And then tomorrow we've got the Ultimate Sensei Season 2 Finals. Kostya's team. How are you feeling, Kostya? Is your team looking good this week?
I'm excited for it. I think it's going to be stressful for sure. Okay. Because especially my two guys, I think they've got some really, really tough pairings. But I think if they play well, they'll do well.
All right. So that's coming up tomorrow and Sunday. The matches are going to start at 10. We're going to come on air at 9:30 on Saturday and 9 on Sunday to do some pre-show and get you all hyped up. I would love it, folks, for anybody out there who likes me. Here's a really easy thing you can do for yourself and for me. If you follow this link here on Season 2, you'll see that we've got a bracket. And if you could fill out that bracket and predict who you think is going to win, that's going to make it even more fun for yourselves and for me when we watch the show, because I've been loving seeing the prediction come in and seeing oh, this person's got a 17% chance to win the whole thing and all that. So go in there and give us some more data, and that'll be super fun. So the stream will actually start Saturday at 9:30 a.m. Pacific and Sunday at 9 a.m. Pacific. We'll also run a viewer rapid tournament Sunday before Ultimate Sensei. So it'll be rough for anybody on the Pacific coast, but it'll be a better chance for people in Asia and Africa and Europe to play. So we'll run a tournament at 7 a.m. that day, 9:30 a.m. Cobus. So, cool. And tournament Sunday before it.
Awesome. So Ultimate Sensei coming up tomorrow. Actually, I should note, I'm going to be doing another game analysis stream, I think at 3 p.m. today Pacific time. So about 2 hours from now. I'll be back.
Excellent.
All right. Bye, everybody.